Let me tell you something right now. The moment you stop chasing him, the game changes. The moment you pull your energy back, he feels it. Men can pretend they don't care. They can act like your silence doesn't bother them, but trust me, it does. Because what truly shakes a man isn't your anger or your tears. It's your peace. It's when you stop reacting, stop explaining, stop begging to be seen. That's the power shift that changes everything. See, most women think power means controlling the situation. But real power, it's emotional control. It's when you take your attention off him and start pouring it back into yourself. It's when you go quiet, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, because silence makes noise, and that noise is called growth. When you shift your focus from, why isn't he calling, to what can I build in my life today, you take back the power he didn't even know he had over you. And here's the truth. The second you reclaim that energy, he notices. Maybe not right away, but he'll feel the difference. The energy that once chased him now glows without him. The woman he took for granted starts to become the woman he can't forget. That's how men work. They wake up when the energy changes. This whole journey isn't about revenge or manipulation. It's about transformation. It's about understanding that when you shift the power inward, everything outside of you begins to respond. That's when he comes back, not because you begged him to, but because your growth made him realize what he lost. That right there is the power shift that changes everything. The emotional flip. Stop trying to convince him. There comes a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that no matter how much she loves, how much she gives, or how hard she tries to prove her worth, she cannot make someone value her through effort alone. That's the emotional flip. It's the shift from trying to be understood to choosing to be unbothered. From trying to convince to simply allowing. See, the problem isn't that you cared too much. It's that you kept thinking if you just did a little more, he'd see what he had. But love doesn't work like that. The more you chase, the more he runs. The more you explain, the less he listens. Because when your energy comes from fear of losing him, he senses it and he takes it for granted. You've got to understand something powerful. When a man knows you're always going to be there, no matter how he acts, he stops earning you. You cannot convince a man into loving you, respecting you, or valuing you. Those things have to rise out of his own realization. The emotional flip happens when you stop trying to manage his perception and start managing your own peace. When you stop sending that long text, stop calling to explain yourself, stop hoping he'll see the light. When you stop running towards someone who walked away from you, the energy in the room shifts. You move from desperation to dignity. And let me tell you, a man can feel that shift deep in his soul. Because when you stop convincing, you stop feeding his ego. When you stop begging for his attention, you start starving the part of him that thought he had control. The emotional flip is not about being cold. It's about being clear. It's about understanding that silence can say more than 1,000 explanations ever could. You don't need to prove your worth. You need to remember it. When a man starts ignoring you, it's not your cue to perform. It's your cue to pause, to breathe, to remind yourself that rejection isn't proof you're not enough. It's a reflection of what he's not ready for. And the moment you stop taking his silence personally, you win back your power. Because nothing disarms a man more than a woman who refuses to react emotionally to his distance. See, when a man pulls away, he expects you to chase. That's part of the cycle. He disappears, you panic, and the balance of power shifts in his favor. But when he pulls away and you stay calm, confident, and collected, he doesn't know what to do. It throws him off. He starts questioning himself. Wait, did she stop caring? Did I lose her? Suddenly, his ego takes a hit. That's when he starts thinking about you again. Not because you chased him, but because your absence created space for him to feel your value. Women often think their words will fix what silence can't. But sometimes silence is the very language a man needs to hear. Because men don't remember every word you said, They remember how your energy made them feel. And when your energy shifts from anxious to peaceful, from chasing to choosing, it commands respect without saying a thing. The emotional flip teaches you to stop reacting from fear and start responding from confidence. It's when you realize that your value doesn't decrease because someone didn't see it. It stays constant whether they recognize it or not. Here's the truth. The moment you stop convincing him, the focus returns to you. You start doing things that fill your own cup instead of begging someone to pour into it. You start walking in your feminine power, soft but strong, kind but unavailable, present but not desperate. That's the version of you he remembers when he's alone at night thinking about what he lost. Because the emotional flip doesn't just make you harder to reach, it makes you unforgettable. So when he ignores you, don't collapse. Don't send the text. Don't overthink. Take a deep breath and remind yourself, love should never require convincing. You deserve someone who just knows. The minute you stop chasing validation and start valuing yourself, the tables turn. Because here's the secret, ladies. Men always come back, but they only come back when you've already come home to yourself. That's the emotional flip. The power to let go of trying to be enough for someone who never had to question you in the first place. When you stop convincing him, you start convincing the world that you know exactly who you are. And that right there is when everything changes. Detachment is the highest form of power. Detachment is not about giving up. It's about growing up. It's about reaching that level of peace where you no longer let other people's actions dictate your emotions. When a man starts ignoring you, your natural instinct is to fight harder for his attention, to send one more text, to replay every conversation, to try and figure out what went wrong. But that's exactly where you lose your power, because every time you overinvest in someone who underinvests in you, you teach them how little effort they have to give to keep you around. Detachment flips that script. It says, I love you, but I won't lose myself loving you. It's quiet confidence. It's grace under pressure. It's the moment you realize that your value doesn't depend on who notices it. It stands on its own with or without applause. See, when you detach, you don't stop caring. You stop clinging. You no longer beg for clarity from someone who benefits from your confusion. You stop waiting on closure from someone who doesn't respect your time. You begin to understand that peace is more important than presence. And once you grasp that you stop being controlled by anyone else's inconsistency, detachment gives you freedom, the freedom to breathe, to think, to step back and see the situation for what it really is, not what you hoped it would be. A detached woman is powerful because she operates from choice, not desperation. She knows she can love deeply without losing herself. She can care without chasing. She can be available without being dependent. That kind of energy is rare and men feel it instantly. A woman who's detached radiates mystery. She's unpredictable in the best way, not because she plays games, but because she's mastered emotional control. And men are drawn to that kind of emotional strength because it commands respect without saying a word. When you detach, you create space, and space is where truth reveals itself. The moment you stop reaching out, you force him to face the silence he created. You give him room to feel the void your presence once filled. Most women never allow that to happen because they rush in to fill the silence, afraid of losing him. But detachment teaches patience. It teaches restraint. It teaches that if someone truly values you, they'll come forward when they're ready. And if they don't, you still win because you didn't lose yourself trying to save something one-sided. Men are wired to crave what they can't control. The moment they feel they've lost access to you emotionally, their curiosity reawakens. They start thinking about you more when they can't read you. They start missing you when they can't predict you. And that's the irony. When you stop chasing, they start searching. Detachment flips the entire emotional balance without you lifting a finger. It's not about manipulation. It's about mastering your emotional energy. You're no longer living in reaction mode. You're responding from self-worth. You're not waiting for the phone to buzz. You're too busy building your life. You stop rehearsing conversations that may never happen and start writing new chapters that don't need his approval. That kind of shift changes everything, because when your peace becomes your priority, your attraction becomes effortless. Think about it. What draws people in more than calm confidence? When you're detached, you don't over-explain. You don't chase closure. You don't argue for your importance. You simply exist in your truth, and that truth has gravity. People feel it even when you're silent. They sense it when they see you glowing, laughing, and moving forward without bitterness. That's the kind of energy that makes a man say, she's different. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you're genuinely hard to shake. Detachment doesn't mean you stop loving. It means you love with boundaries. You give without expectation. You trust the process. You understand that what's meant for you will never require you to sacrifice your self-respect to keep it. And that's where your real strength lies, because anyone can cry, beg, or plead. But it takes real discipline to remain calm, centered, and unbothered while everything inside you wants to react. The highest form of power isn't in control. It's in surrender. When you detach, you're not trying to manipulate outcomes. You're trusting that whatever happens, you'll be okay. That peace is magnetic. It's healing. It's rare. And when a man feels it, it shakes him because he realizes he can't move you the way he used to. That's when the dynamic changes. That's when he starts chasing, not because you pulled away in anger, but because you pulled away in power. So when he ignores you, don't panic, detach, breathe, smile, keep moving. Let your silence remind him that your presence was never something to be taken lightly. Detachment is not revenge. It's realignment. It's choosing peace over chaos, self-respect over confusion, and self-worth over temporary validation. That is the highest form of power. And once you master it, no one can ever take it from you. Rebuild your energy. He feels that even in your absence, energy is invisible, but it's powerful enough to shift relationships, draw people back, and change how the world responds to you. When a man ignores you, the first thing that gets drained isn't your time or your attention. It's your energy. You start carrying the heaviness of confusion, the weight of rejection, and the constant replaying of moments in your mind, trying to make sense of it all. That energy sticks to you, and you start moving differently, slower, sadder, smaller. But here's the truth that most people never tell you. Men can feel that energy even when you're not around. They can feel when you're waiting for them, when you're still emotionally available, and when you haven't let go. That's why rebuilding your energy is the most powerful move you can make after being ignored. Because when your energy shifts, everything shifts. Your confidence, your voice, your walk, your presence. You have to stop pouring energy into what left and start reinvesting that same power into yourself. When your energy is low, your thoughts spiral. You question your worth. You start thinking something's wrong with you. But the truth is, his silence doesn't define you. Your response to it does. The moment you start focusing on what you can control, your peace, your purpose, your happiness, you start reclaiming every ounce of power that was leaking out through anxiety and overthinking. Energy flows where attention goes, so stop giving all your attention to someone who's already pulled theirs away. Redirect it inward. That's how the healing begins. Rebuilding your energy isn't about pretending you're fine. It's about recharging from within. It's about doing the little things that remind you who you were before you got drained trying to make someone see your worth. Get outside. Move your body. Laugh again. Talk to people who make you feel light. Do things that make you feel alive. Because when your energy starts rising again, your glow returns, not the surface level kind, but that deep inner glow that makes people wonder what changed. That's the power men feel even when you're not around. They may not be able to explain it, but they sense it. See, energy doesn't need contact. It travels through memory. When a man thinks about you, he doesn't just recall your face, he remembers how your presence made him feel. And if your energy was once anxious, needy, or uncertain, that's what he remembers. But when your energy transforms, when you become centered, grounded, joyful, he feels the shift even from miles away. That's when his curiosity kicks in. That's when he starts to wonder, what happened to her? Why does she seem different? Because the same energy that once chased him now radiates without needing him. And that change is magnetic. Rebuilding your energy is like watering your soul after a drought. You start setting new habits, new boundaries, new standards. You stop over-explaining and start observing. You stop reacting to what people do and start responding based on what brings you peace. You start vibrating at a higher level, one where chaos can't reach you easily. That's when people who drained you start losing access because they can no longer meet you where you've elevated. Your energy starts to become your filter. It attracts what aligns and repels what doesn't. Men are incredibly sensitive to emotional energy, even if they don't admit it. When your energy used to scream, "I need you," he felt safe pulling away because he knew you'd still be there. But when your energy shifts to, "I'm good either way," that confidence shakes him. It interrupts his comfort zone. It makes him reflect on what he lost, not because you said a word, but because your whole vibration changed. That's the kind of power no words can buy. The kind that makes him miss you without even knowing why. When you rebuild your energy, you stop looking at silence as rejection and start seeing it as redirection. You begin to realize that his absence created space for your evolution. You stop begging for closure because your energy starts closing its own chapters naturally. You start attracting opportunities, peace, and people who match your new frequency. And suddenly, the one who ignored you starts to sense that you've outgrown the version of yourself that once tolerated being overlooked. That realization hits harder than any revenge ever could. Because here's what men always feel but rarely admit. They know when you've moved on energetically. They feel it when the pull they once had over you disappears. They notice when you're no longer waiting for them to text. They can sense when their name doesn't carry the same emotional charge it used to. That's the silent signal that makes them come back, not because of guilt or love, but because they're drawn to the peace you've rebuilt. So rebuild your energy until you become whole again, until your smile returns, until your thoughts stop revolving around him and start expanding toward your dreams, until your light shines so bright that it blinds anyone who once doubted your worth. When your energy is restored, your power becomes undeniable. And believe me, he'll feel it. Because even in your absence, the vibration of your healing will reach him louder than any message you could ever send. Master the art of silence. Silence is not emptiness. It's power in disguise. It's the moment when you stop reacting, stop chasing, stop explaining, and simply let your absence do the talking. Most people don't understand that silence can carry more weight than words ever could. When a man ignores you, your instinct is to speak, to fix, to make him see what he's losing. But the moment you start pleading for understanding, you shift the balance of energy. You give him comfort in knowing you'll always be available. Silence, on the other hand, makes him uncomfortable because it removes his certainty. It makes him question what's going on in your mind. What changed? What you're doing now that you're not talking to him? That mystery is what reawakens his awareness of your value. When you master the art of silence, you stop needing to explain your worth. You stop broadcasting your pain. You stop trying to prove that you care. You just pull back and let the universe, time, and his own thoughts do the talking for you. Because when a woman goes silent, it shakes a man differently. He starts to feel her absence like a shadow, not loud, but ever present. He begins to notice the void she left behind in his day-to-day life. The messages stop, the calls fade, and suddenly he's left alone with the silence he created. And silence has a funny way of turning reflection into realization. Silence gives you back control. When you react emotionally, you give your power away. But when you stay quiet, you create space. Space for clarity, for strength, and for him to feel the consequences of his actions. You're not punishing him, you're simply protecting your peace. You're refusing to engage in cycles of confusion and over-communication. Because silence is not a weapon, it's a boundary. It says, I'm not available for anything that disturbs my peace. It says, I don't need to fight for attention. I deserve it naturally. And that kind of silent confidence is far louder than any confrontation ever could be. A man expects you to respond. He expects you to ask questions, to show emotions, to fight for clarity. That's what most people do when they're ignored. They try harder. But when you do the opposite, when you respond with calm stillness instead of chaos, it surprises him, it disarms him. He doesn't know how to handle a woman who doesn't react, who doesn't beg for his time, who doesn't chase validation. And that's exactly why silence is so powerful. It makes him face himself. It turns the spotlight inward. Instead of focusing on your words, he's forced to confront his own behavior. Silence creates curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of desire. When you stop speaking, he starts wondering what's going on inside your mind. Is she done? Has she moved on? Did she meet someone else? That uncertainty becomes his teacher. It makes him realize that your peace is no longer tied to his presence. Silence shifts the dynamic from you seeking answers to him seeking your attention. It flips the emotional script without manipulation, without words, and without effort. But the real beauty of silence isn't in how it affects him. It's in how it heals you. When you stop explaining, you stop exhausting yourself. You stop reliving pain in every sentence. You stop giving energy to someone who didn't earn it. Silence becomes your recovery zone. The place where you start hearing your own thoughts clearly again. You realize that peace isn't found in conversations that go nowhere. It's found in the quiet moments where you choose yourself instead of chasing closure. That's when your self-respect returns. That's when you start glowing again, not because someone came back, but because you stopped losing yourself trying to make someone stay. Every time you remain silent in moments, when you used to overreact, you grow. You teach yourself that strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers, I'll let time show them. You begin to understand that silence doesn't mean weakness. It means wisdom. It's the choice to observe instead of react, to detach instead of demand, to trust instead of tremble. That's emotional maturity. That's what men remember long after the noise fades. The woman who handled distance with dignity, who let her silence speak volumes. Men feel silence more deeply than words because it forces them to face their own guilt, their own confusion, and their own longing. When you stop reaching out, they start reaching inward. They start to feel that something valuable slipped through their fingers. And it's not because you punished them. It's because you allowed your absence to highlight your worth. Silence draws attention back to what truly matters. Your peace, your power, your energy. So when he ignores you, don't let your emotions speak for you. Let your silence do the work. Because silence is magnetic. It pulls him in, makes him listen, and forces him to see what words couldn't make him understand. The art of silence isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about knowing that your calmness carries a message stronger than any argument. It says, I know my value. I don't need to speak to be heard. And trust me, when you master that kind of silence, he'll hear it loud and clear, even in the quiet. Set boundaries without saying a word. Let me tell you something powerful, ladies. A real woman doesn't have to announce her boundaries. She embodies them. You don't need to shout, argue, or explain 100 times what you will and won't tolerate. When you truly know your worth, your energy, your silence, your behavior, all of it speaks louder than any speech you could ever give. See, boundaries aren't just about what you say, they're about what you do. They're about the way you show up for yourself, how you protect your peace, and what you allow into your space. When a man ignores you, tests you, or tries to play with your emotions, the natural reaction might be to chase, to fix, to prove your value. But that's the trap. That's how he learns you'll bend your boundaries for attention. Real power begins when you stop reacting and start responding with self-respect. The woman who has mastered silent boundaries doesn't chase explanations. She gives consequences. And those consequences are felt in her absence, in her calm, in her refusal to engage in the emotional circus. That silence, that stillness, that unbothered demeanor, it tells him, I will not compete for peace. I am peace. When you stop explaining why you deserve respect and start living like you already have it, the dynamic shifts. A man feels that. He may not understand it right away, but he senses the change in the air. He feels the weight of your absence, the distance in your energy, the quiet confidence that says, I'm no longer waiting for you to treat me right. I'm treating myself right. You see, when you have strong internal boundaries, you stop needing external validation. You stop reacting to every text, every silence, every mixed signal. Instead, you move with emotional discipline. That's the language of a high-value woman, calm, confident, consistent. And here's the truth: men test boundaries not because they're evil, but because they're curious about where the line is. They want to know if you'll stay when disrespected, if you'll shrink when ignored, if you'll doubt your worth when he pulls back. But when your boundaries are silent and firm, he learns very quickly that your energy is not a playground. It's a privilege. He realizes your love doesn't come with a guarantee. It's earned through effort, consistency, and respect. That's when the shift happens. That's when he starts to come back, not because you begged, but because he felt the power of your silence. The woman who sets boundaries without words has done her inner work. She doesn't over-explain, doesn't justify, doesn't try to make him understand her worth. She simply lives it. She walks away from confusion. She doesn't chase closure because she is the closure. Her peace becomes her message. Her absence becomes her reminder. Her composure becomes her power. And let me tell you, there's nothing more attractive, more magnetic than a woman who protects her energy with quiet confidence. A woman like that sends a signal, not just to men, but to the universe, that she is no longer operating from fear or lack. She's operating from alignment. When you act from that space, your silence becomes sacred. Your no becomes effortless. Your detachment becomes divine. You don't have to block him, curse him, or post quotes about how done you are. You simply move differently. And that difference speaks volumes. See, most people think boundaries are about controlling others, but they're really about controlling yourself, your reactions, your emotions, your access. It's about saying, you can't come into my peace unless you bring peace with you. It's about understanding that not every man deserves to witness your softness, your love, your vulnerability. That side of you is sacred, and when you stop giving it away too easily, people start earning it. When you can walk away with grace, when you can smile through silence, when you can let go without revenge, that's when you've truly leveled up, because that's when you stop being reactive and start being powerful. And men feel that deeply. They may not admit it, but it rattles them. They start wondering, did she really move on? Did I lose her for good? That uncertainty drives them crazy because they realize they can't control a woman who's mastered self-respect. So remember this: the moment you stop speaking on what you expect and start living like you deserve it, everything changes. You don't have to set boundaries with your words. You set them with your energy, your actions, your standards. The loudest message you'll ever send to a man is the peace he feels when you're gone and the power he feels when he's near you. Because he knows deep down he's in the presence of a woman who knows her worth and doesn't negotiate it. The comeback: let him see the upgraded you. Now here's the part that flips the whole story: the comeback. You see, after you've been ignored, after you've gone silent, after you've reclaimed your peace and rebuilt your power, there comes a moment where he sees you again. But this time, you're different. You're not the woman who begged for his time, who tried to explain her worth, who lost sleep wondering what she did wrong. No, you're the woman who turned her pain into purpose. You're the woman who went quiet, leveled up, and came back glowing like peace itself. That's the moment every man remembers why he was drawn to you in the first place. Because let's be real, men notice when a woman shifts her energy. They might act unbothered, but they feel it. They sense it when your focus is no longer on them. They feel it when your heart has healed and your happiness no longer depends on their presence. When you detach and rebuild, you become magnetic without even trying. You don't chase attention, you attract it. You don't prove your worth. You embody it. And when he sees you again, whether in person, online, or through mutual friends, he won't see the woman he ignored. He'll see the upgraded version, the one who grew in silence. The comeback isn't about revenge. It's not about showing off or trying to make him jealous. It's about transformation. It's about becoming so grounded, so focused, so at peace that you naturally shine. You've learned to invest in yourself, your fitness, your mind, your career, your style, your energy. You've stopped waiting for him to make you feel loved and started loving yourself in ways you never did before. That's the glow people talk about, not the makeup, not the clothes, but that quiet confidence that says, I'm good whether you're here or not. When a man sees that version of you, the version that doesn't need validation, that moves with grace, that smiles without bitterness, it hits him differently. He remembers how he used to have access to your energy, your warmth, your laughter. And now he's on the outside looking in. That's when it clicks for him. He realizes what he lost, not because you told him, but because your life became the proof. You can't fake peace. You can't fake glow. You can't fake confidence. Those things come from the work you do in silence, the nights you choose growth over grief, the days you choose discipline over desperation. The upgraded you is not angry. She's not bitter. She's not trying to prove anything. She simply is. She's the woman who learned that closure comes from within, that validation is self-given, that peace is her new standard. And that energy, it's irresistible. It's calm yet powerful, quiet yet commanding. That's the energy that makes a man second guess his choices. That's the energy that makes him come back, not because you chased, but because you changed. Every man who's ever ignored a good woman eventually circles back, not because she begged, but because he finally sees what he lost in her evolution. And when he sees the upgraded version of you, walking taller, talking softer, smiling wider, he realizes he doesn't recognize you anymore. And that's the point. You weren't supposed to stay the same. You were supposed to outgrow the version of yourself that tolerated his